Do you actually know what it means to be successful in your business? Do you know the goal you are trying to achieve? And are you sure you've defined success in a way that actually makes sense and is critically good for your business? Because how you define success is going to dictate a lot of your behaviors and actions in your business. So getting really clear about that is important. On the show today, I'm going to talk through something that I think is sort of sneaky important in a lot of businesses and is driving lots of entrepreneurial anxiety, lots of entrepreneurial decision making, and probably your decision making in ways that you don't even realize. And that's the question: what actually is success in your business? How do you define it? And is that definition serving you well? I'm going to get into it right now. So Patrick Cadu, my COO, and I, Patrick was building. We were together in Texas recently building our multi-year vision for success at AJF Growth, as we have committed to working on this business together, as he's joined me as a partner in the business. And the thing about that exercise, we're using EOS, right? So we're Entrepreneurial Operating System, EOS, a sort of a framework and a way to scale the organization up. We aren't, we're in the early stages of adopting it in some ways, but we're using EOS to do this. And one of the things EOS forces you to do is create sort of a 10-year vision for where you're going, and then a 3-year vision, and then a 1-year vision, and then a quarterly vision, basically, right? So essentially the idea, right, is you pick your large scale goal and then you work backwards from there to see how your shorter term goals ladder up to your large scale goal. It's a really sort of intuitive exercise. I've liked this kind of way of thinking before. People do this even if they're not using EOS, and it's really good. And so as Patrick and I talked, we put together a 3-year vision, and we put together a sort of put that in terms of a profit number that we wanted to reach per year. Okay. And then as a follow-up to that, right, we started to try to put that into reality, where we said, okay, if we want to get to X dollars, and probably at some point I'll share that. I'm not going to today, but at some point I may share sort of what that is going to look like. Then we need to have, this many new clients next year and this many new clients the year after that. And anyway, I looked at the actual framework after we'd agreed on the vision. I looked at the sort of like financial forecast that would get us there, and the shape of the organization that would get us there, right? And Patrick had laid it out. And when I looked at that, I noticed, my immediate reaction was, this vision is not aggressive enough. We are being too slow to grow. We're just not being ambitious enough about these goals. And if you've listened to my content for a while, or if you've watched my content for a while, you might be surprised to hear that. You've probably heard me say that I'm not a particularly ambitious person. I'm not a person super driven by building a giant business or anything like that. It's something about it just didn't sit right with me, because I thought like, man, are we just being too conservative about this whole thing? Are we sure we're sort of pushing hard enough to grow the ways that we want to? And I expressed that to Patrick. And he said, well, but hold on, like, we just agreed that this is the number we want to get to. This gets us there. We also agreed that we want to resist a culture of chaos and of shiny object syndrome. We want to stay lower stress. Patrick and I both are right around the same age. I'm 41. We both have young kids. We both are involved in our churches and local communities where we have, we don't want to work 80-hour weeks or anything like that. And so we're expressing both these values at the same time, which is this value around resisting chaos in an agency, resisting always on culture, and at the same time growing the business, et cetera. And we had actually picked the number, and Patrick had built the ladder to get to the number. So he said, what are you concerned about? Like, why would you have a problem with this goal? It also gets us to plenty of money. Like, it gets us to plenty, more than we need by far. So it's like, okay, well, what is the concern here? And I think I realized in that moment that there was nothing that was pushing me towards that bigger, higher goal. There's nothing that was pushing me there, except for some kind of little internal sense that I should be more aggressive, that I should grow faster, that I should go faster. And like, why did I have that sense? Now, part of that is like a problem solving instinct and, I don't know, something that is probably good, right? Is all I'm saying. It's probably not a totally bad thing there, but I think as I've sort of examined what was going on for me as I had that reaction, part of it is just this sense that, like, well, people who are successful build bigger things than what we're describing here. And so, so we should build a bigger thing. That was it. It was just this sort of external thing wasn't coming from an internal value of mine. It was just an external pressure of what I ought to be doing to get there. And I think that thought pattern is one of the most common thought patterns in e-commerce and in probably entrepreneurs and business in general, right? I don't really know how this looks in other industries because I've really never been in other industries. But so in our space, it's just extremely common that people do this. And so here's the main point of what I want to say in this episode that I've come to believe is actually like critically important, okay? And it's this. I've come to believe that for most brands, for most businesses, agencies, brands, software companies, everybody, having reasonable expectations and goals is critical to success. Like what I mean is, had Patrick just said, "You're right, we should go faster," that would have then made us accountable to a goal that was going to make us pursue this big, huge, giant thing. When I go back to like my time at 4x400, we had this idea that 4x400 was going to generate $150 or $250 million, depending on when you asked, valuation at some point. That was the goal of the business, right? That was the idea. And so we went and tried to acquire all these brands and do all this stuff. And our pathway to getting there and doing that was dumb, even even assuming the goal was fine. But it forced us, because we had put a vision on the company that was really, really big. It forced us, and obligated ourselves to investors, by the way. It forced us to then behave in line with that kind of thing and force us to go make decisions that probably were not actually best for running the business and for letting the business be the kind of business that it could be. I talked to another entrepreneur recently who was talking about needing to grow their business because they had raised a valuation that was just bigger than they were going to be at anytime soon. And so even though their business was actually doing pretty well on the whole, they couldn't accept it. They couldn't go sell the business for a number that made sense because the expectations they had created for themselves, in this case, formally in the process of evaluation, where they raised at a certain number. So if they sold at the number they were getting offered, investors would actually lose money, even though it was a very good offer relative to the state of the business, right? The state of the business, it was a great valuation relative to where the business was at, but it was a bad valuation relative to what they'd raised at. And so this external constraint, in this case, again, formally, had done something to their behaviors and actions that actually caused them to make a decision that was suboptimal. And what I'm saying here in this episode is partly that happens, right? Part of it might be an external constraint. If you raise it too high of a valuation, this happens to you, okay? But beyond that, there actually may be a sort of informal external constraint, something that is just your own psyche telling you must build a bigger business. But here's the thing. When I look around e-commerce and when I look at the businesses that I really admire, most of them actually were built around over a long period of time with much more reasonable expectations. So to repeat my main point here, having reasonable expectations for most businesses is actually critical to your success. And it's when you get outside of those expectations that you start making all kinds of bad decisions and bad behaviors come out of it. And I've watched great businesses and great brands do this over and over and over again by getting this trade-off really, really right. Let me just rattle off for you a few brands who I've known pretty well and who I really admire. Okay, Born Primitive. I've had Bear Hanlon on the show a bunch of times. You've heard him on CTC's podcast, an example that's come up a lot in our space. I started working with Born Primitive as a growth strategist at CTC before I was even executive there, right? When they were doing like a couple $1 million a year, Bear was still deployed as the CEO. He was still deployed as a Navy SEAL. He couldn't tell us where he was taking meetings from. It was crazy. And because he was taking them while he was deployed. And it was like a couple $1 million business at the time. And now that business, as Bear has said publicly on my podcast, is like a mid-8-figure business. But do you know when that was that I was first talking to him? Like, I don't know, 2016 or something like that? It's 2025 now as I record this. That means it's taken the better part of 10 years for Bear to get to that stage of things, for it to be now was a really, really, really good business, spinning out a bunch of cash and really high profit. Like, it's just a really good business now, but it didn't happen overnight. There were a bunch of mistakes along the way, and they built steadily and slowly over time, right? In fact, I think one thing Bear would tell you is that at some point, as they were pursuing potentially external capital in the business, selling off part of the business, that sort of thing, as they went down that process, that actually caused them to make a bunch of suboptimal decisions because they stopped having this long view of success, etc. Simple Modern is a huge business and is, by all accounts, has grown at an incredible trajectory. But it's a 9-figure business, and you can learn a lot from those guys. But it was founded 10 years ago. Like, they didn't go to 9 figures in a day, And so they've had very rapid growth, and yet that kind of outcome didn't happen. That didn't happen overnight. And if you are listening to the Simple Modern Story and to what they're doing, because they're great people to learn from, and I love learning from them even at their scale, even though their scale is much bigger than most businesses, if you're trying to say like, well, how come we can't get to this size at this timeline? Like, you're just fooling yourself. That's just not how most businesses work. Natural Dog Company. I've had Bill D'Alessandro on this show multiple times. Natural Dog Company recently sold. Like, it's a really good story of a great exit in our space, where Bill built and sold Natural Dog Co. Well, that again happened over, at least 10 years. That is like one brand. At some point, Bill had an aggregator, a holdco with like 8 or 10 brands or something like that on his portfolio. I can't remember. It was called Elements Brands. And he sold off all of them slowly but surely, put his time and effort into Natural Dog, got Natural Dog to where he got it to, had an exit. And that was a long, steady process of continual building. It did not happen overnight. Now, it resulted in this great thing. And we can also talk about one of my current clients, which has not had an exit, but and I can't name this client, but early 8 figures, like strongly profitable, really good business at early 8 figures. And they have realized in their business now that if they're going to grow again, it's not going to happen on some rocket ship with the next best ad and the next best tactic. They're going to get there through great product development, channel expansion, a couple of those things. And it's probably not going to be a doubling year over year. It's probably going to be steady growth over a very long period of time. And this operator, to his credit, understands, has embraced that. And now it's a business I really love. I think it's a great business, a great brand that has some steadiness to it, and that I think should continue to grow into the future and should be able to keep being like a really profitable, very good business. And he has no plans to exit it. So I have no idea of like what evaluation of that business would be, but it would be good. If you are building an e-commerce business and you want to do the thing I'm talking about in this episode, build a great business over time, part of that is getting your supply chain right, which is very hard work. You need help with it. And that's why you should work with my friends at Move Supply Chain. Move Supply Chain is a Philippines-based supply chain agency headed up by my good friend, Lara Guevara. You've heard Lara on this podcast multiple times before. Lara built the supply chain for my brand that we're just about to place our first POs on. We're going to have margin profiles better than our targets when we went to build the brand in the first place. She sourced, reached out to, identified 60 packaging manufacturers. Packaging is a really important part of that product for a bunch of reasons. So a whole bunch of packaging manufacturers, 20 actual product manufacturers, narrowed it down across both of them, sent emails to like 45 of those packaging manufacturers, just went way above and beyond what is possible for me to do on my own as I try to build that business. And the net result of that is a product that we think is great with packaging that we think is great, and that is all coming at a cost that we love. The thing is, building and working on your supply chain and your e-commerce business is critical work for building a great business. And most people just don't know where to start. So many e-commerce brands that I talk to, they really just have barely talked to very many manufacturers at all. They don't know where the opportunities are for things like faster turnaround times, faster lead times, better terms, lower prices on their products, thinking about how to navigate tariffs, new product development. There's all these elements of it, but Lara and her team have been building e-commerce supply chains for a whole bunch of years. The business was actually born out of their work running supply chains as executives in the supply chain parts of US-based e-commerce businesses. They know what they're doing, what they're talking about. They can help you, or at least you should get on a call and check out and see if they can. Lara tells me that on so many calls, she kind of starts giggling right away when she hears about the supply chain of the business she's on, because it's so under-optimized and she thinks she can help so fast. They're great people. They're affordable because they're based in the Philippines. They can represent you in East Asian countries very easily. It's a very short flight to China and Vietnam, both from the Philippines. No visa issues for either one of those. And in all kinds of ways, I just think they're awesome. It's a very high level of service with people who are great, and at the same time, extremely affordable because your dollars go so far for attracting Filipino talent into your business, including in a situation like this. If you want to get on a call with them, go to movesupplychain.com or follow the link in the show notes to this episode, movesupplychain.com, to get on a call and see if they can help your business today. Even Patrick Cadu, my COO, right, built and sold Supply Razors. He built that business and sold that business. Again, if you go all the way back into the archives of the Andrew Ferris podcast, I think the very first episode on my podcast feed, is not even on YouTube because I wasn't putting it on YouTube then, but is my interview with Patrick when he sold Supply. And that was in 2022. And that episode, he talks about that, it wasn't like it was like $100 million company when he sold it. It was a good outcome at the time. It was a life-changing outcome for Patrick and his family and all those things, but it's not the biggest business you've ever heard of, but it was a really good outcome. You could talk about Common Thread Collective. Common Thread Collective, again, another brand where Taylor and I talked about them, selling a majority share of the business into somebody else, so having an exit, basically, incredible outcome. Well, look, when I started in e-commerce in 2014 with Taylor Holiday and others, Taylor was working on the very beginnings of Common Thread Collective back then. So it's at least a dozen-year build to get to this kind of an outcome. And as Taylor said on the episode with him, getting an actual exit for your business, selling your business, is like a 1% of a 1% outcome for businesses. Like it's or whatever it is. It's a very small number of businesses actually get to that kind of stage. So it's a surprising and remarkable outcome, and it happened over 12 years. Like, just statistically, probabilistically, it just doesn't happen for most businesses. Okay. And so the point of this is that most of the great businesses that I look at, admire the most, and am closest to have built steadily over a long period of time. It didn't happen overnight, no matter what you read on Twitter. There are counterexamples to this, and I think it's important to talk about them, right? Like there are rocket ships that truly are rocket ships. And I've had many of those people on my podcast and talked with them about what makes their businesses so good, so fast. Some of them, by the way, are capitalized extremely differently than your business is, which is really important as part of this discussion. But the rocket ship story is a real story. And so I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to that. I'm going to continue to interview those people because a lot of those people are having sort of best in class outcomes in amazing ways. And there are things to learn from them. But the thing about rocket ships is that when they blast off and launch into space, it's amazing. It's visually stunning. It's powerful. It's incredible. But we also have to recognize that the attempt to blast some rocket ships into space occasionally leads to exploding rocket ships, right? And maybe in our space, if we look at that analogy more, it's more than occasionally. And in fact, again, to use the example of Born Primitive that I mentioned before, where Bears talked about this a little bit, the closest they got to exploding was when they started to go try to do something more rocket shippy than their timeline had previously suggested. Okay, when they tried to go do that. Common Thread Collective tried to mega super fast grow at one point, and it almost destroyed the business. Again, go back and listen to my most recent episode with Taylor about the title is like Taylor Holiday sold CTC. Here's everything he learned. Okay, one of my most popular episodes ever. Taylor talks about being on the phone with the bank during Christmas break, forcing them to decide whether or not they were going to foreclose basically on CTC because they had tried to grow too fast. It went really poorly in a bunch of different ways and all that. And why they tried to do that? There's all kinds of reasons they tried. I mean, Taylor was just trying to grow a good business. But rocket ships explode is the point, right? Sometimes. Okay. Another one of my recent clients, thanks to the brilliance of one guy there, is rescued from the brink of insolvency. Okay. And that's because the expectations for growth. Here's the reason why it happened. The reason why this brand almost was insolvent, like very, very close to being shut down, was because they could not accept a very good outcome in their business because their goals were for a crazy monster outcome. And so they kept pouring cash into something that was never going to yield the results they want. They got undisciplined with their growth, and that was that. And so we can and should learn from rocket ships, okay? But here's part of what I want to say. We also can and should learn from the brand that just got to $4 million or $3 million and is steadily growing and is building well and is profitable and is optimizing and is learning and all of those kinds of things. Those stories are important. In fact, I intend to feature more of them in the future than I probably have in the past. I feel a weird thing here, right? Because I know what content of mine gets the biggest numbers or whatever, but I just think we have to keep highlighting the stories of good businesses built steadily over time and non-chaotically over time, because it's a really good outcome. The monster rocket ship story is both rare and doesn't need to be everybody's goal, and it doesn't need to be your goal. And in fact, if it is your goal, or even if it's informally your goal or sort of subconsciously your goal, like I was expressing about my sense of my own, business earlier, where it's like suddenly I'm just have this weird subconscious desire to push harder and faster on the business that doesn't come from anything realistic. Like it doesn't even come from my values, really. It's just this thing that's there that you should check that impulse, because it's actually super dangerous. And by having that impulse, you may put yourself into decision-making patterns that are in fact very bad for the business. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be ambitious. I'm not saying you shouldn't have big goals. And I'm not saying you shouldn't capitalize on moments when they come. There are times to do all of those things. And I sometimes can be overcautious, actually, in some of those ways and not react strongly enough. But, when I look around at really good brands, there's a survivorship bias here for sure. But, as much as you hear about this concern of competition is going to come kill us, and that happens for some brands for sure, or, the economy is going to change or whatever reason you think at some point your business is going to just be in a terrible shape. In many cases, those concerns are actually overwrought. They're not actually a lot of times those things are not actually what happens to businesses, and businesses do fine for a long time just growing steadily. And especially if you're not trying to grow a $300 million business or $500 million business or whatever, it works perfectly fine to do this. Sean Frank has said this recently too. Most people shouldn't try to build a $100 million plus business. It's not that good of an idea. Sean is really clear-eyed about this. And understands that what he's doing is not the path for everybody. And so, I think that's good advice that we ought to be listening to. So what does this actually look like? What does this mean? How do businesses actually grow? Because this is where it gets to brass tacks. The reason that I think these goals matter so much is because it should, by maintaining some sense of realistic growth for your goal and saying that's good enough for you. It should hopefully put you into directing your actions towards the things that matter most. So at AJF Growth, right, we're talking about building really good process and product, not just chasing revenue. Okay. If we wanted to grow faster, we would have to blitz through our training, our recruiting and training process to hire more strategists. We'd have to blitz through our onboarding process for those people and for brands. We'd have to go set up a big giant sales blitz as well, right? Where we have to go try and get a bunch of new brands, solve a bunch of problems as they come, et cetera. And almost for sure, we would make our product worse in the process. Now, again, there may be times where it's worth doing that or investing a bunch of capital to do that and hiring people or whatever. I probably, honestly, I'm just not a skilled enough entrepreneur to go build that way. And this is another thing that's underrated here. Some of the brands that are blitz scaling, that are just rocket ships, to keep using that word, are run by people who are more talented than you. And that's all right. They're more talented than me too. I'm just not really that good of an operator to be able to go and build this massive thing, on top of the fact that I just don't have the ambition for it. And so again, it can be okay to do that and to recognize that the talent level is different. Sean Frank's a great example of this. When I listen to that guy talk, or even Taylor, they just get it. They live and breathe this stuff in a way where the reason they're so insightful with their content all the time is because they're smarter than most people. They just are. They're really good at this kind of output, and they understand it, and they're able to think really clearly about their businesses and about the sort of macroeconomic moment, and they reflect on those things really well. And that stuff shows up in their business, and that's hard earned. It's partly just instincts and intelligence. It's partly hard earned over a bunch of years working at it, et cetera. But you should just recognize whether or not that's actually you, and it's okay if it's not, right? It's okay if it's not where you are, and there's some sort of honesty about that. And you can build a great business without going to those kinds of lengths and those kinds of heights. There are a lot of reasons you should consider switching your customer service help desk software to RICHPANEL. And among those is that it's very, very likely to save you money. If you're on one of the legacy software companies that provides customer service help desk software, like Gorgeous or Zendesk, RICHPANEL guarantees you that they will save you 30% on your bill by switching over to RICHPANEL. So that's immediately a reason to pick up the phone or write an email and schedule a call with RICHPANEL and see if they can help you. But it's not just that. It's not just that it's cheaper. It's also that it is a really great piece of software. So they also see an average of 30% reduction in customer service tickets. That's because their self-help customer service portal is so effective at getting customers answers to their questions, in part powered by AI, because RICHPANEL was built from the ground up with AI. They didn't incorporate AI into legacy software. It's an AI first piece of software. And that is really critical, because if there's any part in your business where AI can make an immediate immediate impact, and you just know right away you should be using AI to make the experience for your customers better and to make your costs go down. It is in customer service. It's so clearly and obviously a place where AI can make a big impact fast. And RICHPANEL was built, like I said, with AI from the ground up. And that's why brands of all sizes are using it and using it effectively, including very large brands like Ridge and like Pila and Lomi, businesses that are frankly probably much bigger than yours, right? On top of that, RICHPANEL also promises to get you transitioned to their software in 2 weeks. They know you don't have time to waste on this, especially this time of year. So you can go do that, and it can make a big difference. Now you're about to go into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, where very likely your ticket volume is going to spike. Now's the time to do it. Before that happens, get those customer service agents trained, like I said, in 2 weeks using that software. Before that bill gets to its biggest point of the whole year, go do it right now. Go to richpanel.com, follow the link in the show notes to do this. Tell them I sent you. RICHPANEL.com to get started with it today. So what does it actually look like? Like I said, I think when I look at the businesses that are growing consistently and steadily over time, adding a few $1 million a year in revenue, growing steadily in profit, getting that profit percentage up, here's what I see those brands doing, okay? It is not actually primarily unlocking funnels with new ads and new landers, et cetera. I really want to maintain a focus on that. I mean, at AJF Growth, we're working really hard to create high converting ads and offers and things like that for our clients because we think we can make an impact on their business there. But I'm just telling you, when I look, like, commitment to great product and commitment to your customers is like, it just really goes super far in this. It really, really does. I just watch brands that do that well do great. I just recorded an interview. It isn't out yet, but with the CEO of Fiera Cosmetics, which is actually a brand I'd never heard of, but our friend Sam Mendelson connected us. Dan Carnat is his name. And I was so struck by the commitment that this brand had to, like, really caring about and serving their customers, doing really rigorous testing with their customers on new product releases, because he cared so much about, and the way he said it was not betraying his customers' trust. You know, that shows up in your P&L. And it doesn't happen at rocket ship speed a lot of times, right? It happens actually more steadily over time. So commitment to your product and customers, it's so easy. Again, great brands that I look at just like relentlessly care about this. They think about it all the time, and they just constantly think about, how do we make a better experience for our customers at the level of product. Sometimes people will say, you know, oh, your package is the only thing you do that has a 100% open rate. And then the implication of that they draw is like, make better packaging. It's like, well, maybe, but the actual implication of that is because the customer bought your product and wants your product. So the real implication is make better products, care about your customer experience more at the level of the actual product, because that's the thing that they care. That's the central to the relationship, and it's central to the transaction. So do a great job there is really, really helps. I know that's obvious, but I'm just telling you, makes a really big difference. Secondly, developing new products. This is another muscle that I've talked about some, but that I think really is important. That for many, many brands, the continued work of product development, for one thing, it actually does help with this element of making great products, because the more you develop new products, the better you get at it. The more you understand the process, the more you can think through what's actually happening at every level of your supply chain, your suppliers to your suppliers, all those things, and how to each element as you pick apart the bill of materials, like, you know, all of the different things that are going into your product and making it good. Like, each time you go develop more products, you're going to get better at it, and you're going to get better at making products people like and understand how to release them better and all those things. So it's a muscle that builds, but also it's a way to reach new people in your business. And the thing about developing new products is it's slow. Again, to preview this episode with Dan, you should subscribe, by the way, wherever you're watching or listening, because this is a really good conversation with Dan that you're going to want to hear from Fiera Cosmetics. He mentions in that episode they have 20 new products in development right now. Okay, 20 new products right now. And he said it's because it's a very long process. We test rigorously. We care about it a lot. And so we just have to get the pipeline going early, and that's how we do it. Somewhere in there, great brands seize moments, but they don't over leverage themselves. So they care a lot about maximizing key moments, not just sort of endlessly iterating on their evergreen creative, but actually maximizing key moments, right? And at the same time, they do that without sort of betting their whole business on it. I've watched bad operators with too big of goals go and try to go make BFCM bigger than it needs to be, instead of be okay with having a very big BFCM, but not necessarily truly maximizing the reach and the volume because it would be too risky on inventory buying or something like that, or go sell a bunch of product you don't actually have, put it all on pre-order and piss off a bunch of your customers because your goals are just like, we have to go bigger, 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 bigger. It just doesn't serve people very well. And often what happens there is it hurts your brand's reputation, and it can actually be something you can't get out from under. So seize moments, but don't over leverage yourself. There's a way to do that with excellence, but not over leverage yourself. Like I said, resisting shiny object syndrome was another part of this. Like, be careful about how much of my podcast you listen to or watch, of X you read, of whatever forum or whatever group you're in, you read and keep an eye on, because just notice, just try to do everything you can. Algorithms are going to float the most impressive stories to the top more than probably they should, right? This is where actually forums can be really, really helpful, like my friends at Workspace 6 or something like that, because it's going to give you a broader view of what's actually happening in the industry than just the stories that get the most replies on X, where the algorithm gets a signal of engagement, okay? If you go on X right now and say, we built a $3 million business and we plan to grow by 50% next year, nobody's going to be amazed at that. You might even hear that and go, really, only grow 50%? Like, it's like, yeah, but that actually might be the path to doing that steadily in your business that really, really works. And so might be the path you should take, and can actually, you keep doing that kind of thing year over year over year, and you can build a great business once again. And then some of this just comes down to math. And the little phrase I like to use so often, which is P&L design. Okay. How do you build a great e-commerce business? Like, your CAC as a percentage of revenue going down creates more profit in your business, or allows you to invest more in growth, one of the two. Okay, so you can actually speed up growth over time. Part of the way that happens is that returning customers become a larger and larger pool of your revenue, and that's a function of time. The more returning customers you have as a percentage of your revenue, the less you're spending on CAC as a percentage of your revenue. Those two things go hand in hand, right? Because you're mostly spending ad dollars on new customers, mostly. And therefore, that creates margin expansion in your business. And that's a factor of time. So let that factor of time happen. Let yourself get there. Another thing is, like, hammering away at your supply chain and financially engineering it. Again, this is not going to happen overnight, but like hunting down great suppliers, work with my friends at Move Supply Chain, like go like source additional suppliers, get backups to your suppliers, get the bill of materials like Roman Khan talked about on my podcast a long time ago. And absolutely, what's the word I'm looking for? Interrogate it, right? Understand your suppliers to your suppliers, all of that stuff. Go to China, fly there yourself, right? Or send a representative from your team. Like, those things all, again, take time, and they take relationship building, and they take effort, and they take size. The bigger your business gets, the more leverage you're going to have with your manufacturer, and the more your value you create for your manufacturer. And so the more your relationship can grow in those ways, you can get longer terms, all those things. Maybe you can spin off more cash. That takes time. But it's the hard work of building a great business. It's unsexy work, but it really is a huge difference in e-commerce because of the way that inventory eats up cash in an e-commerce business. Okay, and of course, keeping your OpEx lean. Keeping up your OpEx lean sounds really easy in theory, right? Just don't overhire, don't get too much SaaS that you don't need, or don't pay for too much SaaS that you don't need. Hire, work with or hire remotely. All those things definitely help. But do you know what you also have to do to keep your OpEx lean? You have to build good operational processes. And I can just tell you, as somebody in a business right now that is thinking a lot about our operational processes, and in fact, that operational processes are core to our business and to how we create value for our clients, it's hard work. It doesn't happen overnight. The promise of AI is awesome, and it's real, and there's going to be all kinds of ways that AI keeps helping your business. But I'm still not at a point where I can just, like, natural language prompt AI, please give me all of my spreadsheets now. Every week at exactly this time, and it works. Like, if you're going to go build that AI workflow, it's going to take some time. If you're going to have somebody else build it for you, you're going to have to show them what it is and document it and all those things. All that stuff takes time. If you're going to implement EOS, it requires a bunch of work and effort up front. All those things matter. And so if you're going to run a lean OpEx, you can do it, but it takes time and continued effort. And so the point is, all of these things in the design of your P&L, they matter a lot in creating the kind of business you want to create. And yet at the same time, none of them happen fast. For most businesses, they don't happen fast. And so you shouldn't, if you give yourself a long view of success in your business, and you can think, I don't have to win today at this crazy scale. If you can think about that, you'll give yourself the freedom to behave methodically and deliberately around optimizing the business in the way that you ought to optimize it over a long period of time. And if you do that, you'll set yourself up for a whole bunch of success, and for actually having a great business that's really profitable, whether you keep it or whether you sell it. Okay, it spins off a bunch of cash over time. Again, and actually another way to spin off cash in your business is to not grow too fast. Okay, because fronting cash for inventory is really expensive if you're growing too fast. in all of that, this is the point that I'm making, right? It's not just good for you emotionally and psychologically to have reasonable goals, though I think it is, okay? It's good for your business. It's actually, I think, good for your business. It's when you get outside of realistic expectations and goals for your business that you end up making a bunch of bad decisions. And as much as people express fear that if they don't keep the pace growing incredibly fast, things will fall apart and they'll miss the moment, they don't express enough concern that if they go too fast, that they will break their business, or that they'll never be satisfied because they're going too fast and they're not actually reflecting on what their real goals are. They don't really think of those things. Here's the way I think about this for AJF Growth, and the place that I've come to, and the goals for our business, and also for Resolute, the e-commerce brand that I'm starting. Okay, one of the core things that's happening for me personally is I'm really actively trying to think about. I'm not always great at this, but I'm actively trying to think about, keep in the center of my target here, the idea of growing the business from a place of contentment, not from a place of discontent. And what I mean is, right now, I have this amazing life where I have a family that I love, and my job makes plenty of money. Like, we're taken care of. Our needs are there. I have great friendships. I'm involved in my community here in ways that I care about, that I love. I don't work a bajillion hours. It's great. My life is awesome. So why do I need to grow a really, really big business really, really fast? Well, I don't need to. And so I can practice joy and contentment in the business right now. And what that frees me to then do is approach the business that I have from a place of the pursuit of excellence and the pursuit of growth and wisdom, which is something that matters to me. Like, I think that doing the hard work of trying to grow a business will form my character and form my form me into the kind of person I want to be. It will help me develop skills that will help me navigate life as I continue to age, right? I'm 41 now, as I continue to look towards the second half of my life. Like, by caring about these things and doing these things well, I will then have all kinds of outcomes. It will produce additional financial outcomes for me, right? And the point is not that I have need there, but the point is that I can do these things in ways that are important to all the things that I actually want and care most about and produce the most joy in life. But because I have a goal of optimizing my life for joy, I can ask the question, honestly, do I actually have that kind of joy and contentment now that I really want to have? And if I do, then what is actually motivating me to grow the business? It's not discontent. It's not I'll be happy when my business gets to X dollar amount. It's instead a sense of, okay, I care about doing this thing well because I care about doing anything well. And so I'm going to hold myself to that and put myself in accountability with Patrick and with my team. And I'm going to create opportunity for my team members in the Philippines and in the US and those kinds of things that are values of mine that I care about. If I do that, then my expectations become reasonable. The work itself produces all kinds of value in my life beyond just financial, and it becomes a goal that I can really get behind. And at the same time, it makes it so that I don't feel this need quite so much to say, "Come on, Patrick, we got to go faster." Instead, I can say, "No, we're growing at a good pace right now. We're going to do as good of a job as possible. We're going to serve our customers as well as we possibly can. We'll make mistakes along the way, but we'll care about them in the process as humans, as businesses, and everything else. And we'll just do a great job." I think what will happen is that I will be more joyful in the pursuit of growing my business. I'll have the kind of life that I want. And critically, I will grow a better, more durable, more valuable business along the way. That's the bet that I am making. I think it's the bet you should make too. All right. If you liked this episode, you should subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. You should like it wherever you're watching or listening. And you should leave a comment. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. Argue with me, yell at me. Tell me why my goals aren't big enough. Whatever you think, it'll be just fine. Or you can email me directly at podcast@ajfgrowth.com if you do want to work with us when we open up for adding new clients in our growth rate, or with our manageable and only semi-ambitious growth rate. You can do that. That'll be next year. We'll start taking on new clients. So you can go to ajfgrowth.com, fill out the intake form. We'll get a conversation started, talk about whether or not we're a good fit. And I may have a good recommendation for you, even if we are not. I'm happy to refer out to other agencies that I trust. There's plenty of fish in the sea. So ajfgrowth.com, like I said, fill in that intake form there. Give me a little bit of information about your business, and then I can get talking with you about that. You can also reach out to me on X @Andrew J. Ferris. Would love to hear from you there. Love to have a conversation publicly with you. I think that's pretty much everything. Oh, I've got so many good episodes coming up. My calendar is probably as full right now as it has ever been in the history of my podcast, with great interviews on the docket. So I've got Taylor Holiday coming soon. I've got Jordan Menard coming soon. I've got Katie Mamari, the founder of Caden Lane, coming soon. Just a whole bunch of really, really good businesses. Those are some big monster businesses. And I've got a bunch of other ones as well that are more middling sizes in keeping with this episode. So middling sizes, there's like still mid 8 figures, they're monsters, but really good businesses built over a long time. The kinds of businesses that I'm talking about in this episode that have been really effective. That's it. You know how podcasts work. You know where to subscribe. You know how to do things like that. Let's be done.